Hey everybody, how's it going? Happy Valentine's Day. We are actually recording on Valentine's Day. You just won't see this until a couple days later.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's been a week.
I mean, yes. I feel like I haven't done this in forever, but I guess technically it has been like 2 weeks because the
Yeah.
way the way last weekend
hmm
fell.
They were stuck
We
listening to me. I don't think they all enjoyed that quite as much.
so we hosted a baby shower for my childhood best friend. I've literally been best friends with her for like 25 years at this point, and between hosting and family drama and cleaning and organizing and just all the things, we got home after that and I was like, I have no brain power.
Not
Daniel,
us family drama, just other people's
oh
family drama.
no, other people family drama.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, when
So,
you cut out the toxic people in your family, you tend to not have family drama.
yeah, it's okay. It's okay not having as many family events. It really is.
We're family. We're family members.
Yeah.
No,
So,
no, we didn't hurt anybody.
yet.
Stop. So, the
Pig farm.
so the name of our Valentine's Day episode last year is Our Bloody Valentine, featuring our cats. You
hmm
totally need to go listen.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, it was very dirty.
There's some cat fucking involved too, I think. I can't remember if there was any actual like pussy humping that occurred during the episode, but
I thought they were fighting because I remember one of them hit like the Xbox or DVD player or something.
I don't remember. But yeah, the
I'm
pussies were involved in
pretty
that
sure it
one.
got dirty.
Yeah. So
So
they're
go
all
listen to
fat and
that
lazy
one.
now.
I mean, they're basically married. No, I'm just kidding.
West Virginia style.
Brothers and sisters.
Anyway, um so we are going to continue our tradition of opening with a call review that isn't necessarily related to the topic we're going to talk about, but apparently people are interested in hearing that kind of shit. So I'll eventually talk about some of mine. We were talking about this earlier today. A lot of my like really cool, good, memorable calls happened so long ago, I can't even remember a lot of details of them. Like I can remember general things, but it wouldn't be as entertaining to tell you because I don't remember like exact like vital signs and exact sequences of events. It's more just impressions of some of them. But I'm sure if I sit down and think about it, I can pull out some old ones. But Michelle is our resident black cloud over here, who always gets all the good stuff every time. So
Eh,
it's just the EMS gods breaking you
the
in the first few years of your career. It's fine.
I was a black cloud as an EMT, and my
But
medics
I
always
mean,
got
you gotta,
irritated because they're like, I have to run these calls.
but you gotta reset when you level up your cert. So
I mean, I don't know. I've always
how
been
many
black
people have
cloud.
we known though who were white clouds, and then once they got their medic, it was like shit hit the fan.
I feel like it's 50-50.
Yeah, I've met a few. Now there were, but the ones that were black clouds as EMTs stayed black clouds. Like
Hi, that's me. Under problem.
well, so there was one guy that we used to work with. I'll just say the first name, Adam. You know exactly who I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And what was funny was he, as an EMT, God, you would just get your absolute shit rocked working with him. Like there was no end to how awful the calls were. And we had one guy on the shift who he got his medic right around the same time I did, and this boy was like gung ho for all of it. He
Mm-hmm.
wanted all the good shit.
Yep.
He was tubing people right and left. Maybe he shouldn't have tubed that many, but that's a separate discussion.
There's some
Um,
supervisors that were having RSI offs.
yeah,
So,
yeah, but when he had a stretch of about a month, almost a month, I believe, where he had to work with Adam, and it fucking broke him. Like he straight up was like,
it straight
"Nope,
up broke
I'm
him.
done. I really don't give a shit about running any more calls ever." Because he was super gung ho, would show up early for shift, would take calls for you. Like, all after
Mm-hmm.
that, no. So
Bare minimum, sending you a slow station.
and so when Adam got his medic, it didn't fucking stop. Like of course, but we were all laughing. So it's like, your turn, motherfucker.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, but in memory of Valentine's Day and talking about genitals and such, Michelle's call
It's my
from
call.
recently was quite interesting.
Treasure your boy parts.
Boys, this is going to hurt listening to.
Okay. So, mind you, this was my fourth call before
Noon.
I got the call at 10:15. So, or
God damn.
I made patient contact at 10:15, I think, if I remember correctly. So, hi, I have a good memory for weird numbers. Anyways, um So yeah, this was like my fourth call by like 10. So get dispatched out priority 2, which I have no problem with, but in the system that we work for, we don't normally go out to priority 2 calls unless it's like the first response or something. So I was like, and dispatch attached me to a second call at the exact same time that was priority 1. So like there was all kinds of
Fumbles.
miscommunication. I had to call dispatch multiple times. I'm like, I need you to read me the address and tell me what I'm doing. And they're like, well, we gave it to you. I was like, 2 calls.
Yeah.
So they ended up sending me to the closer call, but it was dispatched out as a priority 2, welfare check, law enforcement on scene requesting assessment for a diabetic emergency. Okay, like that's fine. They said priority 2. A lot of law enforcement in this area has like EMT training, so I was like, okay, maybe like dude man just needs like an IV or something. Get on scene, and of course you had to park up like this massive hill where the road was, and his trailer was like in this hole, like ravine, muddy. And of course, it was one of those driveways that's the like rock gravel. So like even by itself, the stretcher like automatically sinks. Just lay lay in the environment.
I would rather deal with mud than deal with that.
I mean, agreed. Well, we had both because you had to go through like a whole stretch of mud before you even got to that, and then like you could only get the ambulance so close. So I park up, I walk down so the ambulance can like pull as close to the house as possible, and I walk in, and there's this guy that's laying like lateral recumbent, if I can get it out of my mouth.
One-sided lateral recumbent.
Stop it. One-sided lateral? Breath
It's
sounds?
unilateral for the educated in the room.
Or if you're educated but need to be re-educated. Anyways, he was lying right lateral recumbent, and I mean, he was looking around. He didn't look good. I mean, he was pale. I was like, okay, what's going on? And so the story that I got from law enforcement and the ex-wife that was on scene, her nosy ass is the one that called it in. She's like, my ex-husband hasn't talked to me for 4 days. I was like, you guys talk that often? You guys talk that often? Okay.
No.
So
No.
I mean, granted, good for her that she did check on him because dude man wasn't doing so hot, but
Good for him that she did.
yeah, but he also has a son. Like, why the ex-wife?
Fair.
But anyways, law enforcement said that ex-wife hadn't talked to him in like 4 days. He's a diabetic. He has a history of hypertension. She got worried, so they came. They did a knock. They saw him laying in the living room, so they basically broke in. He wasn't doing so hot, and they're like, "Hey, just so you know, it's obvious that he has shit and pissed himself all the way from the back of the house, the living room, and trailed all the way through the house, and is now laying on the floor in the living room." I was like, okay. So, I mean, I can palpate a radial pulse. I start getting vitals. I take a BGL first. His hands were kind of cold to the touch. It was cool in the house. Didn't get it confirmed if he had heat, but environmentally, it was cold in the house. It was cold outside. He felt cold to the touch. So he was already covered with a blanket. So get the BGL, it's $398, but for an experienced, obviously unhealthy diabetic, that's not as high as I was expecting. Well, what cracked me up is as soon as I said, okay, your BGL is $398, hun, and he's kind of, groaning. He didn't want me to touch him. He kept telling me stop. He was obviously confused. Pupils were about a 4, and I promise that matters. But what cracked me up is law enforcement, like, are in the background, like, high-fiving each other, and they're like, yeah, I knew it was in the 400s. I was like, well, it's like right at 400. They're like, yeah, but I told you it was high. I was like, this isn't DKA. Like, he's sick.
There's some other shit going on.
Yeah, I was like,
shit.
I mean, yes. I was already, especially with the nausea, vomiting, or, the diarrhea, all the stuff, I was already thinking down the sepsis route, which when you have an infection, your BGL tends to go up even if you're taking medication, pathophys. So I'm taking vitals. Heart rate is in like the 70s, 80s. Blood pressure was like 150 over, I think it was like 80. It was normal. Whether he did or did not take his medication, it was fine. SpO2, I was having a really hard time getting a reading. His extremities were so cold, and, we don't have the baby little sticker things that you could put on like a forehead. Well, so for good measure, I get the infrared temperature.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
infrared temperature thing, and I start trying to get temperatures from him. Well, so I start with like his forehead at red 91. I'm like, he doesn't feel that cold. Let me start
Oh.
checking things. So I like get him under the armpit. I lift up the blanket that's covering him and get him kind of in the like crease of the thigh, like not the groin, but like a warmer core part of the body. So I was getting temperature ranges all the way from 91 to like 96.4, I think. So I was like, okay, it's low. We're getting there. But he was confused. He was talking to me, and I promise this matters. So the BLS crew gets on scene, and they're like, "Hey, what's going on?" I tell them what we have, and I asked them if they would mind getting a stair chair because he's alert enough that he's like maintaining like stiff limbs. He was kind of in a sitting position on his side. So I was like, I don't think we have to like drag him out of here. And the way he was like kind of resisting being touched or manipulated, I was like, I don't see him cooperating with like a scoop stretcher or something. I was like, let's try a stair chair. So we roll him onto his back, me and the male EMT, and the patient starts, resisting, saying no, like he's getting agitated. He didn't want to be touched. And we're like, talking to him. Well, to get a better grip on his legs, and we had two other people step in to help us, I flipped the blanket. And mind you, he's butt ass naked, but I hadn't seen anything yet. I flipped the blanket with him laying not really supine. He was kind of like low Fowlers. He was leaned up against the EMT. When I tell you that his pee was not
Trigger warning here for the sensitive ears in the room.
Yeah. His pee was not visible because his scrotum was like about the size of probably not a basketball, but it's definitely bigger. Maybe a kickball. I don't even know what to compare
like
it
a
to.
soccer ball, maybe.
It wasn't as big as a soccer ball, but it's definitely bigger than a softball. I mean, it was literally about like not quite head shaped, but that wasn't the only thing. It was black and green and pussy and literally smelled like death. Obviously, I don't have testing in the field, but I pretty much was like, oh, so we have gangrene of the scrotum. We have gangrene of the scrotum that smells like death. And of course, as soon as you flip the blanket, everybody starts gagging because it literally smells like death. And Dude Man is like actively fighting us. So we're like, okay, we need more hands. So it took 4 of us to pick him up. He's actively like arching his back, pushing, saying no. Well, we finally sit him up, sit him on the stair chair, and he's like arching his back. So we're trying to scoot his rear end back. Well, I stand up, step back, and I look at him. Next thing I know, his pupils are an 8. He is decerebate posturing, not decorticate. He is decerebate posturing and not breathing. And I was like, does he have a seizure disorder? They're like, no. I was like, please, for the love of God, tell me we have please tell me we have a pulse. Yeah. Four of us couldn't find a pulse between femoral, carotid, radial. So within that like 2 seconds, I'm like, okay, oh dear God. I guess we're doing this. So I told law enforcement, I was like, please call dispatch and tell them that we have a working 83. And this guy is just like, he had to have had his EMT. He was so fucking gung-ho. He was like, I'm gonna call it in. I got your airway. Tell me what you need to do. And I was like, let's start let's start compressions first. Like,
let's do the simple stuff.
Yeah, I was like, it's fine.
Mungo push chest.
He was a big guy too. It was Mungo go push chest. Well, I mean, he had all of his like stuff on, so I wasn't gonna make him do that. So me and the female EMT, we helped pull him onto the ground. They moved the stair chair. Male EMT steps in, starts doing compressions. Well, luckily we have a Lucas. She hauls ass outside and gets the Lucas. Well, he's diaphoretic. Pretty sure he shit himself again. So we're having issues getting the Lucas to not stick to skin. So while the 2 EMTs are fiddle fucking with the Lucas, I start doing compressions. Well, my first compression down, I was like, oh, so I did the ribs. I did the ribs. It's not gonna lie, it's been a minute since I've been like first on. I know I wasn't technically first on chest, but like one of the first people on the chest to break the ribs. I was like, oh, I forgot what that felt like. So we start working him. Fire got on scene, and I know normally, and some people may run this call differently, I made the decision to go ahead while we were doing all the things. I got an IO, we got an airway, all the things. Once fire got there and we had enough hands to move him, I made the decision to not work him on scene for 20 to 25 minutes and go ahead and initiate transport. Because yes, it was a witnessed arrest, but suspecting cold sepsis, which is what I was leaning towards at this point, regardless of what the initial blood pressure was, especially considering he was fighting the cuff, I do believe the initial pressure was accurate because I had a radial pulse, all the rest of it. But it, I can't fix cold sepsis, and he had gangrene of the scrotum, so I can't I can't fix that. So I made the decision ultimately to tell everybody that we're going to go ahead and board him. We're going to go ahead and work him and move. Well, everybody did a phenomenal job with communicating and listening, and we truly ran that arrest, even moving the patient out to the stretcher in 2-minute cycles. I don't think we missed a single pulse check. We didn't miss any drug pushes. Well, I think the amio got pushed back one round because the stretcher was stuck getting it into the truck with all the mud. But with something like that, so the patient, the initial rhythm that we had when I slapped the pads on him, he went from alive to asystole. And I was like, well, shit. Well, we gave total of 3 rounds of epi. We finally got VTAC. He did get shocked twice. He got more epi. He got amio. We ended up getting ROSC actually before we initiated transport. It was almost like the perfect storm of stuff. He maintained ROSC with an amio drip all the way to the hospital. I did not give him a pressor because all the blood pressures that I was getting back were normal. Like, they were actually fine. Took EKGs, heart looked fine. This truly had to have been a cold sepsis call. Get to the hospital, tell the doc everything that happened. They're like, never look cardiac history? I was like, no, but look at the scrotum. As soon as they flipped,
you just look at it.
I mean, literally, as soon as you flipped the blankets off of him, everybody was like, I mean, you flip the blankets and the smell is like a fucking like wave that wafted and hit everybody in that. I guess you would call it a trauma room. I don't know if that's what they call it at this hospital, but anyways, in the trauma room, it like wafted and smacked everybody in the face. They're like, oh, I think it's sepsis. I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's cold. I'm pretty sure it's cold sepsis at this point. With the temp, I never followed up and got a core temp, but anyways, so that's kind of the gist of it. I mean, yeah, you have, the little hiccups, the issues with trying to RSI in a moving vehicle. Sarah, I love you. You drive like a bat out of hell.
Out of hail. You didn't say that. I was
okay.
emphasizing.
I was saying I didn't hear it.
No. We're in the South. It's not hell. It's hail.
It's hail.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
I mean, she got us there. It was great. She also.
You didn't almost have a concussion, or you didn't have a concussion by the end of it.
I did not eat metal cabinet this time. It was great. So it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that rough. Yeah. Granted, I'll give it to her. She was already in the truck when we got ROSC. So she thought it was still an active arrest and I needed, not necessarily help, but like the patient needed more than I could give. She didn't hear that we got ROSC. So I think if she had known that we had gotten ROSC or had confirmed that she heard it, maybe settle down a little bit. But he definitely needed more than I could provide.
Yeah.
But the biggest question that I know we don't talk a whole lot about pathophys, and there's all kinds of education out there. But one, this was a nasty call, and this is a witnessed arrest. Oh, once we got ROSC, because Peoples went back to a 4 and were reactive. The whole thing was just wild. But something that I was consistently asked by not just law enforcement on scene, but fire on scene, the EMT crew, and actually one other paramedic had asked about is why was he fine? Obviously confused, but talking, borderline fighting until we sat him up. And what is sepsis? It's distributive shock. Mm-hmm. So especially once we get to the point with sepsis that you're going into like multi-system organ failure, think about, this is the easiest way that I can equate it. So with a STEMI, you start with your EKG at baseline. Usually you get depression first, and then it infarcts and it elevates, right? So when you have sepsis, you're going to have a lot of elevated vital signs. As the infection continues, it gets worse. At some point, the body is going to start giving up. It's going to start killing organs, all the rest of it. Your vital signs are going to start trending down. At some point, they'll hit baseline again, but then they're going to continue trending down if you don't get care. So with him being in cold sepsis, I think he was fine because he was laying down. And this is true of septic patients too. They're fine while they're laying flat. Same with your orthostatic hypotension patients.
Mm-hmm.
But if you think about a container of water, everything is, all the water is filling all the creases and stuff at the bottom. But as soon as you start moving it, you're going to have open spaces or, spaces on the bottom of the container that doesn't have fluid. Well, it's kind of the same with sepsis. As soon as we sat him up and basically shook the container of fluid, his blood pressure dumped. Well, I think because he was in cold sepsis, because he'd probably been laying there for a hot minute, who knows how long he's had gangrene of the scrotum. I'm going to say that as many times as I can to make you go, ugh. More than likely, as soon as his blood pressure dropped, even though it was relatively normal, his heart just couldn't handle it. I mean, with that amount of infection, being cool, all the rest of it, his body basically just took a shit and said, I can't do this. Which is probably also, outside of the fact that it was a witnessed arrest, why we got him back so quick, because I don't think it was truly cardiac in nature. We had a good airway. We gave him all the drugs. We started warming measures in the truck because, at that point, he doesn't have a fever. He's hypothermic. So that was just the big question that a bunch of people asked is, why was he fine until you sat him up? But it was also a nasty call. Boys, take care of your bits. I will say, one of the firefighters followed up with one of his coworkers on scene, and this is the part that kills me. The coworker said that Dude Man had been dealing with gangrene of the scrotum for 2 weeks before we got this call. I'm not a boy, and I know I'm missing bits, but if there's something concerning and you have swelling and pain and a body part turns black.
I don't even. I don't like it. I don't. Obviously, nobody does. I don't like even. When my balls get nicked. Getting that fucking huge and nasty for 2 fucking weeks. Okay, how?
But even if it's a finger, if you have a swollen finger and it starts turning black, why don't you look at that and go, maybe I should go to the hospital?
I don't understand. I really don't. You would think after we've done this for so long that some of the stuff would start to make sense, and it fucking doesn't. I really, truly have no idea why some people don't take care of themselves. And obviously, we're not trying to be disrespectful to this guy. It's a shitty situation, but we're all in EMS, presumably. We all have to laugh at this a little bit, but also be why?
But even his ex-wife said she didn't understand his aversion to taking care of himself. She said that he literally would refuse to go to the doctor until he was actively dying. So I guess in theory,
I was more so just saying in general, we're not being disrespectful when we talk about this. I mean, we're used to casually referring to this stuff and being like, God, why people do shit like this? We're jaded and yeah.
I don't even know if it's jaded, but it's truly okay, a finger's one thing. Maybe somebody could be oh, it's just a really bad bruise. But if your scrotum is swollen, pussy, and black and green, that's one of the I even understand the respiratory patients have been intubated multiple times, wanting to resist going to the hospital and getting intubated again. I understand there's a certain level of I'm tired, don't want to deal with it, but trying to walk and having pain and just this is one that I don't understand.
Yeah, no. Mm-mm.
And his pee-pee you couldn't see.
Yeah, it lost that game of turtle.
I really just can't describe this sight. I really could. It's a good thing I didn't take a picture.
Right. Don't no Snapchat. As much of proponents as we are of social media for bettering EMS and all the stuff which we're going to talk about here in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Don't Snapchat pictures of patients. Anyway, before we get into that, I did put out there a little post on TikTok. Apparently, you can post text. I didn't even realize that you can just post text out there and that's it. It didn't let me hashtag anything, so we didn't get a whole lot on it. But we did have someone.
Stupid.
Yeah, I know. It was kind of weird. I was like, oh, shit. It just went straight to posting. Okay. But we did have a question from somebody. They were asking for gift ideas / preferences. I'll read it verbatim. Gift ideas / preferences you guys have for your significant other to gift you guys that pertains to EMS. Please no. Well, speaking for us, please no fucking t-shirts. Like, we don't need any more of the I fight what you fear shit. I mean, if your significant other really likes that, cool. But
Yeah, I guess it's personal preference. I mean, they make a lot of cute ornaments that say EMT, paramedic, EMS, fire, law enforcement. Um, I mean, they make keychains, they make cups. I mean, nowadays you can pretty much just go on Amazon or Etsy or anything and search like, EMS public service
mhm.
gifts and it brings up a bunch of stuff. There are a lot of really cute ones. Like I'll give them that. Would I necessarily use some of the stuff? Not really, but like I could see some of the stuff being cute for like a new grad or
Yeah.
something like that.
I mean, my first thought goes to something useful on the job. So,
Stethoscope.
stethoscope, or a nice pair of shears. There's a
Mhm.
couple of good options on the market.
Mhm.
If you're not, I don't know if this person is an EMS or if it's just their significant other. It's an EMS.
Mhm.
Obviously, the Leatherman Raptors are the gold standard of trauma shears. X shears is another really, really, really popular one that I see around. So it just depends on what your person wants. I like the little nifty doodads and stuff that you got to fold out and do all the things with. So I don't go for the X shears because the X shears are basically just scissors,
Yeah.
really strong scissors, but they're just scissors.
Daniel likes his bat belt.
Uh, no,
It's not a bat
I
belt.
mean,
He likes his knife. He
well,
likes his, multi-tool.
but I don't keep a multi-tool on my belt.
No,
I keep it. I
in a
will either have it
pocket.
in my pocket or in a bag that goes with me on calls, but not necessarily on my person.
He likes his bat bag. You have a
Yeah,
bag. You.
I do. Oh no, I love bags. I love all the bags. No, I mean, as far as what I carry, like in my pockets, which obviously you've seen, if you follow us on TikTok, but I mean, I like stuff that's eminently useful,
Mhm.
not something that like I might use once in 10 years, but practical stuff. Flashlights, we love. I mean, good flashlights that you can either clip to yourself or that won't. The problem I've always had with flashlights is over time the connections get loose. So if you can
Mhm.
find a flashlight that can handle getting jostled around all the time,
Mhm.
and that's small enough to carry on your person, but also bright enough to be useful,
Mhm.
fucking awesome. But I would lean towards stethoscope shears. They got those digital stethoscopes now, the Echoes, that are pretty cool. That can
They're
record stuff, amplify. Like, they're nice.
they are. I feel like they're more beneficial if you have like bad hearing. Because like I've had a
What?
couple I've had a couple old providers that like their stethoscope like can read the EKG or whatever, and they'll like try and diagnose off that. I'm like, but no,
Use your fucking monitor.
actually read it. Don't let it tell you what it is. I will say,
Oh
oh
God.
weird,
Don't get me started on that.
a weird random one that actually I just thought of. They make cup holder diffusers.
True. If you like
So
smelly
like,
stuff.
well, smelly stuff, and if we're being honest, I mean, not all of our counterparts smell the best. So sometimes you get in the truck and you have to go, please squirt, please squirt, please squirt. That's what she said. Or excuse me, that's what he said. Anyways, make the car smell better. I wasn't intending for that to come out, but it just kind of
That's what he said.
it just kind of came. You're welcome. That was unintended.
Anyway,
that
diffusers.
that was unintentional, but
Diffusers of non-biological fluids.
Ew, the visual right there was horrific.
Just spraying semen mist all around the
Seriously,
place.
stop talking. Is there a mute button here?
Not that you can reach.
I'll fight you for it. Stop. What is Valentine's
Anyway.
Day without making dirty jokes?
Yeah. Well,
But I mean,
for some people.
yeah. Anyways, I was gifted one. It was on my Amazon wish list for like the longest time, and it was gifted to me. And the like rechargeable ones, they work so well. Like they work so well. It simple little car things that can make like your if you work 24s, 48s, the longer shifts you actually like stay at a station. I like little like household gadgets kind of like that too. Like it makes the car better. Like if I have a really You know what? I just realized it would have been so beneficial that I could have, sniffed my car diffuser after that nasty scrotum call, and I didn't have it. It was in my personal car.
Or the little like sauce holders that you can like mount on a air vent, and it will literally hold like your dipping sauce from the restaurant.
Oh my
I've
God.
seen a lot of people use those.
Zaxby's was giving those out free with meals at one point, and we kept a stock on our truck that we when we had
Jesus.
permanent stations at one of our other jobs.
So little knickknacks like that, like stuff that's practical goes a long way.
I will say this is also us answering. As we've gotten older, we get angry when they rearrange the Walmart or the grocery store. So if it's a younger person, they may want something else.
Yeah.
They may want that T-shirt.
Yeah. Yeah. So something that's come up a little bit more recently that kind of want to delve into a little bit is the topic of EMS agencies utilizing social media and having some transparency with the public, which transparency is kind of a big topic right now. Kind of wanted to chit chat about that a little bit because as we're seeing there's a lot of areas in which EMS on the whole hasn't been doing a great job keeping up with culture in general. We haven't adapted very well our leadership models. We haven't adapted our business models terribly well. And there's a lot of things that on a higher level need to be changed, especially when it comes to insurance and the healthcare system as a whole, that we are still largely dependent on. So that's, understandable. But when we're living in the age of information and
The
people,
internet is forever.
the internet is forever, but branding has never been as important as it has been now. It's always been important, but branding now is happening whether you like it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Your name is out there, both as an individual and as an agency. So your options are to just let the public, whatever's going to be said in public be said, or taking some responsibility for it, some ownership of it, and saying, hey, let's give people a window into our everyday lives, what it's like in EMS, which is what we try to do here generally. But each agency really needs to be, I think, stepping up and taking some ownership of that.
Well, and I know it's hard because, HIPAA. HIPAA. Night Watch tried to bridge that gap of like, hey, running actual calls. But the reality is the general public is not going to care that most of the calls that we run are not priority lights and sirens. They're not the emergent, scrotum issues. It's going to be like toe pain at 2:00 in the morning, and the general public doesn't care. Now, the good thing about social media is it can help. It can also hurt because outside of, the internet, the internet in some form or fashion is forever. Information is readily available. I'm not saying we are not by any means saying lie about who you are, what you do, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But when talking about branding, it's important to go ahead and put out the positives and put out what you're doing. For example, restaurants. If you have no social media presence and then something bad happens and somebody puts a bad review out there, that's all that anybody's going to see. You haven't made a brand for yourself. You haven't made a name for yourself. Nobody knows anything except your freaking menu. Then all you have is that one bad reputation. And sure, over time, as you remedy the situation or good reviews come, and this goes for law firms. This goes for, it goes for any kind of business. But with social media, it's helped, like with TikTok. We see so many content creators that are able to make videos while they're on shift, as long as they're not like representing their service, as long as they're not doing sketchy things, even within the hospitals. Now, the people within the hospitals, what are they getting in trouble for? There was one nurse that was literally like twerking on top of like a mentally ill patient's head.
God, I saw that. I was like, is this for real?
Yeah, so like, if you're doing stupid shit like that, then it's gonna hurt you. It's gonna hurt the hospital. It's gonna hurt your career. It's gonna hurt your name. But if we're able to get out there, and something that was brought up recently, I think especially for the newer services, or even services in general, for wanting to get new grads, you should be doing targeted recruiting. What does the military do? all of the military branches go out to the high schools, to these like not craft fairs.
Job fairs?
Well, job fairs. It's where they sell fruits and veggies.
Like farmers markets?
Fresh markets. Yeah, farmers markets. That
Yeah.
one. They'll go out to different stuff like that and try to get the name out for people, because people either have a wonderful opinion of the military, or they've heard horror stories and they have a horrible opinion of the military. So with EMS, we could be utilizing targeted recruiting. We should be going to these places, even if, let's say, you work for a QRV service that you have to have a minimum of like 2 or 3 years before you can get hired. You can still put your name out and do joint training with other services, with schools. Honestly, we should be putting more into education and recruiting and wanting to work our professional connections harder with the brand new providers coming in.
Well, and I think too, when you look back at history, so when I grew up, we still had the yellow pages and phone books.
I mean, they still make them.
I mean, I guess, but like that's what we had.
Yeah, that's all we had.
Like my mom had a planner with all these little cards in it that everybody's information was written on. Those were the only people we regularly interacted with or had any social connection to.
Mm-hmm.
Our circles were much smaller back then. Even 30 something years ago, our social interactions were on much smaller scales typically. So if you had a bad experience with a business of some kind, sure, you might go tell, your 4 closest friends.
Mm-hmm.
I was homeschooled. I don't think we had quite that many, but, in general.
He had one friend.
But it was, word wouldn't like spread like wildfire.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of dirty businesses were able to get away with things for longer periods of time and collect more money because there wasn't the accountability of information being spread. Well, now, if you have a bad experience, you can put that on the internet immediately. I mean, I would say most people have close to 1,000 connections on any given social media platform on average. Probably you're in the hundreds to thousands. So automatically your reach is significantly higher. And then if let's say you really got pissed off by this business, you go put it on some Facebook groups, to some other pages,
it gets shared.
It's going to get so much coverage that one interaction, that one negative interaction can, in some cases, make or break a business, or at the very least significantly impact their bottom line. So with EMS right now, we can all admit that there's a lot of issues deep down. There's a lot of corruption. There's misuse of funds. There's abuse of authority all across the board. Now word gets around about stuff like that. And I think that's why recruitment struggles for a number of reasons. There's a lot of people that are just not getting into this field, which again, we are not presenting ourselves in any way to motivate people to come into this job. We're not. Like there's so little good quality advertising for quality positions that, I mean, yeah, you see posts on Facebook every once in a while that conveniently either don't list pay or list a range of pay that spans like 20 grand, which doesn't tell anybody anything. You're probably going to be on the low end of that no matter what. But we there's just not a good forward presentation, and that doesn't bode well in the current environment. You can argue all you want about it, whether or not it's it should be this way, but it is this way. It is this way. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. So I think that it behooves a lot of agencies to start actually proactively getting involved in this stuff. Start TikTok pages, start, a YouTube channel, a Facebook page, something where people can access information. And I'm not talking about the 10-second blips. No, give actual real information to people, give them some value, do some education. And yes, like we've talked about before, there's educators everywhere. I would say probably at least 95% or more of EMS content creators focus on education, which is fine. That's cool. But there's so many other issues that we need to talk about and deal with that we're just completely blowing past.
Well, and this is a whole soapbox for me because a lot of the there was one in particular that really fucking pissed me off that was like, oh, your paramedic education for cardiology sucked ass, come to my, I mean, he said a lot more political than that, like politically correct, but it was basically, oh, your cardiology education sucked, come do my webinar, pay this, blah blah blah. And I took offense to that.
Well, you should never advertise that way. You should never advertise saying, well, you were taught wrong.
Yeah.
You're stupid.
I know.
I'll enlighten you.
I know your cardiology class is only 2 days and blah blah blah. And I got mad because I was like, man, I work my fucking ass off. My instructors, it was an entire semester. But this comes back to, yes, education and content creators are great. Call reviews are great. But what the fuck about putting more into initial education, making it making a barrier to entry, making it harder to come in. Not like, fuck everybody, only, 1% can come.
Yeah.
But not everybody's meant for this field. We need to do more prep work. You should be putting more into initial education. And all of these educators, like, yes, continue because medicine is constantly evolving. Bring the new medicine instead of reviewing, oh, atropine is this and it does this. Linda, you should have learned that in fucking school.
We know.
Yeah, you should have learned that in school. Why are we doing drug review?
Well, and again, no shade on the people who are putting out quality, accurate information about that.
Oh, not one.
There are several people that we've interacted with that actually do their homework.
Oh yeah, do their homework and do the continuing education. I'm talking about the fact that so many people are trying to do like drug review because your education sucked. Why are we not putting more into initial education and the content is not like coaching people, but like giving leadership stuff, giving information, talking about this.
Mm-hmm.
Something with social media too that we see is not only and I know we've briefly talked about this, but like most of us have multiple jobs. So between personal connections, even across multiple different departments, fire, EMS, law, whatever, hospitals, but also on social media, we circle back to, we all know each other in some form or fashion. If I don't know somebody personally, I know somebody that knows somebody. And when it comes to if you publicly done fucked up at a service and it makes the news, even if it's a local newspaper, that shit's going to spread like wildfire. It's not like you can go 2 counties over and work and expect it to never make it that way because everybody talks. If it's on the internet, if it's on social media, if, I know one person that works, 2 counties over and I just ask them a question and then they go digging and then, they tell so-and-so. Word spreads. I mean, there have been a few at multiple different jobs that we have worked for where it's like you'll have an interview or a hiring class and they're like, oh yeah, we have like, 10 people from 5 different counties and, Daniel and I know like 80% of the people. You have to be careful because anything that makes the news is on social media. Things can be found out. If you post, for example, I'm not saying this directly happened, but like, for example, everybody talks about the running joke of, don't call out of work and then post on social media that you're like at the beach or something. Cause then, you called out of work and said you were vomiting, but you actually weren't.
Yeah.
If you sign up to work a shift and then decide that you're going to call out an hour before that shift to go to another job interview, shit like that makes it around.
Yeah.
I mean, and then you may end up shooting yourself in the foot for another job because they're like, oh, well, you like don't take anything seriously.
And there's a lot of, and we've talked about this a good bit, that there's a lot of toxicity in the rumor mill. A lot of things are spread that shouldn't be, or that are only half the equation.
I would say the half truths are the worst one. Like there's just a tiny bit of truth to it, and then it gets just blown out of fucking proportion.
But there is a healthy interconnectedness that does exist and should be utilized for situations like this, because we have witnessed this. People who have been, have a history of sexual predation, and even if they're not charged with anything, or often what places do is they basically say either leave or get fired, and people will just leave, and there's no track record of them being that way, and so they just perpetuate their bullshit around however many services will give them a job. And I understand that yes, you should always take word of mouth with a grain of salt. I'm not saying that,
It
oh,
should
you
be
should just
law.
believe whatever anybody says. Like,
Mhm.
obviously, you should investigate. But if you're having you're having consistent feedback from a variety of sources that's all saying the same thing, that's not something that should be ignored. That is something
Mhm.
that should be addressed. So we need to stop letting that kind of shit slip by.
Well, and I mean, we've talked about this before. Stop sleeping with your fucking coworkers. Um, it's a problem. Like, if you shut up. If you want to date, like that's one thing. But I'm talking about like if you have married person fuck, and you don't have an open relationship, like that shit needs to stop. And when talking about I think we're thinking about the same person. You know, when you have somebody that is known as a sexual predator, like it's kind of one of those things they need to stop getting hired so they can stop like moving service to
Mm-hmm.
service and sexually harassing men and women.
Yeah.
Primarily women, but the men have
Men
fallen
too.
in there. Yeah, the men have fallen in there too.
Yeah.
Because this whole like sexual predators getting away with shit within this field and just prolifically either sexual harassing or actually sleeping with people,
Mm-hmm.
like that's not okay because everybody, yes, you're going to have like sexual contact in all branches. We hear about it in the military, in the hospital, all the rest of it. But why does EMS have the nickname EMS stands for extramarital sex? Like why I know we joke about it, but like why are some people proud of that?
I mean, I think that is common to all branches of public service. So
Agreed.
cops have a very, very, very strong reputation for that as well. That's not
Agreed.
lopsided in that sense, but
Not at all. And well, and it happened literally the sex shit that happens at Grey's Anatomy, I've heard is like actually pretty fucking accurate within the hospital. But like
yeah,
point being we shouldn't be wearing it like a badge of honor. If we have these professional connections, like Daniel said, investigate to an extent, trust but verify.
yeah,
Like
no, yeah,
obviously
definitely trust but verify.
obviously if it's like just a obscene drama that doesn't make sense and you're hearing something that doesn't fit with the person, like obviously don't take everything 100% because the rumor mill is the rumor mill, but like professional connections we should be training with other departments.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we should be utilizing social media in a way that people can see. I think it would be cool, for example, if our service did like little blips of kind of like call review video blips, but in the sense of, hey, this was our role supplemental wise or on a BLS call,
Mm-hmm.
what I took over. It's almost like the viewpoint. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that could be done with it.
And even just utilizing it to create a positive image. If you
Hmm.
do, and I understand you have to. It's one of those things because you're never going to put on there the people who are the shit talkers.
Yeah.
Never going to happen. So I get that. You're inevitably going to have a biased presentation.
Hmm.
At the same time, utilize that positive presentation.
Hmm.
And I think that can still be true. That can still be something that you're factually doing while also addressing the problems. And if we were more aggressive and open about addressing the problems and getting rid of people who are chronic failures at their job, then that, and we talked about this before, that is going to attract people. That is going to bring people in
Hmm.
who can say, hey, I like that. I like the fact that they care about the outcomes of their patients enough to thin the herd, to weed out the people who are not actually performing as clinicians. Like, I think that's fucking wonderful. And
Hmm.
that's the way it should be.
Well, and I mean, you could, for example, it's kind of free thoughts are free flowing at this point. I've heard different services that do different things to acknowledge good providers. And
Mhm.
how often do we see it turns into a popularity contest? It fucking pisses me off. But when utilizing like social media or something, why don't we publicize the Lifesaver Award? Like if your service does something like that, or um you have like 7 slots down while you're waiting to hire people and a bunch of part-timers are picking up like literally last second shifts. Praise them.
Mhm.
Not just behind closed doors, but we should be praising people publicly. Be
Mhm.
supporting our people. If somebody within the service has a baby, like obviously don't post the baby and like, Vacuder pictures all over the internet, but like you could still talk about it and acknowledge if your service actually cares about family. There's so many aspects to it that can be utilized, and a lot of those positive imagery are going to naturally attract people. Yes, public service as a whole needs to be paid better. That is always going to be a fucking argument. But here's the thing that I have heard, especially during the hurricane, a lot of the county run services, county councils were like, oh my God, y'all didn't miss a beat. You did amazing. You need like this massive fucking pay raise and blah, blah, blah. Well, once the emergency has passed, once they start getting to like, the budgeting meetings and everything, they tend to forget that emotional side of
Mm-hmm.
things. So putting out there what we do, how, it affected us working the hurricane
Mm-hmm.
and the risks and dangers and stuff like that, like it keeps us also in the forefront of the people that are making the decisions about our pay, like county council, for example, or the fucking hospital, or whatever it may be.
Or the general public.
Mm-hmm.
Like if we are so closed off to letting the public see anything, we are so closed off to it, and I personally believe that is one contributing factor to why we have so many internal problems in EMS, because we have isolated ourselves from public view so much. Yeah, sure, we're all concerned about how the ambulances look, how the QRVs look, and everything. Everybody hyperfixates on that and on uniforms and all this stuff, but nobody actually wants to deal with peeling back the layers and looking at how are people being treated? How are people just as a culture interacting with each other? And I think that's another reason why we have gotten away with for so long with so many negative coping mechanisms and such an awful view of therapy, because we have closed ourselves off from people being able to see the nitty-gritty shit. Obviously, yes, HIPAA comes into play. We can't, it's not like we're law enforcement and be like, hey, look at this cool drug bust we had. Like, we could run the most, atrocious, incredibly complex medical call and nobody can know about it.
Gangrenous scrotum.
Like, yeah, I mean, yeah, sure, we can talk about it in a, hypothetic sense, but like, we need to utilize good publicity, but I think that we're afraid of doing that. I think that we're afraid of people seeing in because of how bad shit can get.
Granted, I know it was related to COVID, but something that I think a lot of services had going for them was allowing lay people to sign HIPAA waivers and liability waivers and stuff, and allow them to ride on shift to experience. Because night watch, storytelling, it's never going to show them what we actually do.
Now, that what's also incumbent on this is not just leadership making those decisions, but us on the ground taking some responsibility to say, you know what, even if I want out of this field, or even if I am having a shit day, or I'm frustrated with something going on with management, or I'm, being reviewed for something, we still need to be mindful of how we present ourselves to the public. And maybe that just means you need to shut the fuck up.
Well, and other services. Like,
but I'm just saying in general, like specifically talking about the public. Like, yeah, I can talk to somebody from another service and they get it. Like, I can hear other people bitching about their job and be like, okay, cool, like I get it. Like,
I'm not even talking about that though. Like, I was called out one night at like 3:00 in the morning to possibly pronounce a dead body on a welfare check. And come to find out, law enforcement had not confirmed it was a dead body. They didn't even know that it was a body. They just called me out priority 2. The whole thing was a sketchy mess. But point being, found out that the owner of the house was fine. He was actually pretty pissed that law enforcement had basically broken in, even though his door was already broken, but that we were physically in his house. But point being, we go out into the front yard. Fire is like, not like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. But like, genuinely, he looked so fucking bad and guilty because he was like, I heard you had a rough day. I'm sorry you were out here. Like, who the fuck talked to him and basically told him, fuck you for calling me out here for something stupid? And law enforcement basically did the same thing. They were like, I'm so sorry that we got you up for literally nothing, but we were concerned. I was like, okay, like, does it suck being woken up at 3:00 in the morning for nothing? But at the same time, I didn't have to write up a cardiac arrest chart. I didn't have to write up a DOA. I didn't have to wait on the coroner. Like, all of the positives, but like, why is it okay that we talk to each other, not just amongst EMS, but like even how we present each other to other like branches? that it's okay to make this poor little firefighter that's like an EMR feel like shit that the paramedic was called out for nothing. Why does he have to be woken up? Like,
Yeah. I mean, he got woken up too.
yeah,
Like,
but well, and same with the BLS crews, because like, I was called out for a breathing problem one night, and the crew that came with, the first thing that they said to me instead of it wasn't like a, "Hey Michelle, sorry it's late." It was a, "Where the fuck is this other truck? This is their area." It's like, dude, they're on a
yeah.
fucking call.
Yeah. You don't get to accumulate pity rights.
Yeah.
Like, okay, you got woken up. Guess what? It happens to every fucking body.
hmm Well,
And
and something else too that I think is important, we need the general public to understand, and I honestly don't have a plan for this. The general public needs to understand that the toe pain calls, you're going to go to triage, but also let the general public and county council, whoever controls the money, know that we're understaffed. Even when we're fully staffed, call volume is so astronomical, and these poor EMT crews in particular are getting their fucking shit kicked in. We need more trucks. We need more trucks to
everywhere.
yes, to spread out the call volume. Like it, I don't think one of my closest EMT crews, like, I don't think there's ever been a night that they've gotten more than like 2 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
Like, period, since I've been working in their area. And it's absurd, the change between 911 to interfacility to just the call
Mhm.
volume in general.
Well, and I'm tired of hearing the whole, "Oh, this is what you signed up for" bullshit. Like,
It's not. I
it,
sign up to save lives, not
I
to sound cheesy.
well, and when I signed up for EMS, I didn't sign up to be fucking superhuman.
Yeah.
Like, I'm still gonna have to deal with shit like a normal human does. I still have to deal with sleep deprivation. Still have to deal with other shit in life.
Mhm.
Like, you don't. Yeah, we're supposed to. Part of us being professional is an extra layer of emotional regulation and not taking things out on patients and family members and coworkers and all of that stuff. Yes, that is true, but you're still entitled to have shit days, period,
Mhm.
to be exhausted because we have normalized so many bad habits, so
Mhm.
many bad policies and procedures, and we have failed to do things that, I don't know, the aviation world has figured out that mandatory downtime can be important. And I understand that, it's hard to juggle that because of staffing, but you know what? Aviation industry has made it work. I think they're a little bit bigger than we are.
Mhm.
So it's not that it can't be done. It can be done, but we have closed ourselves off from the public so much that we don't have an opportunity to educate them. Other than when people can come out and have their own voice, but the agencies need to be having a voice too.
Well, and something too, and again, I don't know if this would take like a video or talks or what, but I think something the general public, if they're not a hateful person, doesn't understand is something that also makes emotional regulation hard for us is the way people talk to us.
Mhm.
We were called out for a stroke the other day and get on scene, and we're trying to do a stroke assessment, and the first thing out of the dude's mouth is, "Well, I'm having a fucking stroke, so can we leave now?" It's like, no, we need to do an assessment so
Yeah.
we know what to call in. I'm having a stroke. Mind you, he's walkie-talkie, like,
Yeah.
there was nothing about him that was strokey. But the
Yeah.
point is, like, we're not going to show up to be your taxi and you refuse to do an assessment or answer I mean, I had a respiratory patient. I was asking him questions, and, "Would you stop asking me fucking questions? I can't breathe." Well, you just answered me in a full sentence, so it's obviously not that bad. I need information. I think the general public would be fucking appalled if we started putting the spotlight on how
Mhm.
patients and or family members talk to the general public. Because, like, man, most people know if you talk to a server like that, there's always a risk they're going to spit in your food. Like,
Well, it's just because we put on a uniform doesn't mean that we suddenly have no boundaries.
Mhm.
Like, we're still individuals who still have boundaries. I was having a discussion earlier today that if you need to be respecting other people's boundaries, and when you cross those boundaries, be prepared for them to push back.
Mhm.
And it's not you shouldn't go after them for their reaction. You need to evaluate, why did I cross that boundary? And we need to have those conversations with people. That's how I deal. Usually my first line dealing with those kinds of patients is, hey, you're not going to speak to me that way.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to try and figure this out, but you are not going to talk to me that way. Let's try again.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it escalates, sometimes it doesn't. But that's the kind of stuff that you need to do. And again, I'm sick and tired because I hear it. I hear it from older providers
Mm-hmm.
who say, "Oh, well, you shouldn't be bothered by this or that or whatever." Fuck you.
Or it's, I'm going to match their energy.
Because that's not great either.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's the old school mentality of, oh, well, this is what I signed up for, so you just need to take the beating like I did or like I do. You need to do this because this is the job. No,
Mm-hmm.
no. Those are the kinds of things. Yes, we do need to be emotionally tough. We do need to emotionally regulate. We do need to be mature, but there is still the human component that needs to be accounted for.
Mm-hmm.
And suppressing that chronically for years is probably part of why our suicide rates are so fucking high.
Mm-hmm.
And why we have so many people bailing out in droves because they're not being treated civilly with appropriate boundaries like they can be elsewhere in other industries. Other industries, yes, also have similar problems, but there's plenty that don't.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why people would much rather go open a lawn business, go to a car manufacturer, work at a fucking restaurant than stay in EMS because it's not fucking worth it. It's not worth it for anybody's mental health to be treated that way.
Well, and I think it comes down to with leadership, supervisors, pick your word, having boundaries and how you talk to each other. Not, the supervisor if the provider got in trouble. First of all, if it's a male and female like kind of combination, you need to have somebody else in the room because
Mm-hmm.
he said, she said bullshit.
Yep.
But it's also accountability because anything that happens behind closed doors, there's no evidence. I mean, I guess is what you could go for. And that's where the toxic behavior perpetuates. Whether it's the provider loses their shit and acts crazy, whether it's the supervisor talking inflammatory, sexually, whatever, there needs to be more accountability than just one-on-one.
Yeah. So this is why I think we need more transparency. I think social media plays a part in that, but as a whole, we need to allow a window more into what we do and be prepared to deal with some nasty stuff coming out that we will actually need to address rather than sweeping it under the rug and ignoring it because that's not working.
Well, whether you agree with it or not, I mean, just factually stepping back out of the emotion side, look at what Doge is doing.
Yeah.
I mean, just flat out looking at stuff, assessing stuff, asking questions, why is this happening? And, they have the committee to decide what to do, blah, blah, blah. I'm not getting into politics, but the point is shine the flashlight, find the bad shit, and then have some people, leadership, management, maybe the field crews get to vote on how to handle whatever. But shine a flashlight. Don't be like, oh, this means we're failures, but actually take the steps to fix it. Well, that was a lot.
That was good.
We went on a bunch of different tangents.
I know. Well, if you learned something, good. Tell your friends about it. If you were offended, good. You probably needed to be. Anything else you want to throw in before we sayonara?
I don't think so. I mean, we can go off on tangents forever, so probably not.
Deuces, y'all. Have a good one.